Other news now, and ISIL says it was behind an attack on a military academy in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. Now, 5 soldiers were killed and 10 others wounded in the gun battle near the Marshal Fahim National Defense University. 5 of the attackers were also killed. The same site was the target of a suicide bombing in October, in which 15 officers died. Now, this comes 2 days after a suicide bombing also in Kabul killed at least 103 people. Afghans are blaming the government for failing to improve security. Mushtaq Rahim is a regional security specialist and joins me now live from the capital, Kabul. Good to have you with us live on Al Jazeera, sir. Let's just begin with the ferocity of the attacks by the Taliban and ISIL during this period, both within the capital and beyond it. I mean, in a winter offensive, we've never seen these armed groups attack so ferociously. Why?
Well, talking about the attacks in Afghanistan and particularly in Kabul, one has to differentiate between Taliban and ISIS, where ISIS has mainly been trying to impose themselves through attacking the larger cities because they have been under pressure from the security forces throughout last 2 years and particularly during last 6 months, and they have been trying to break the pressure and come out and attack major cities. So you have to see it separately from what Taliban are doing. The attacks from Taliban have 2 or 3 particular dimensions and why they have upped the ante against the Afghan government. First and foremost, they have been under military pressure throughout 2017, where they have been pushed back by the Afghan military forces with support from the international forces. Secondly, they have been under political pressure since the announcement of the US administration's South Asia strategy as well as UN Security Council's mission to Afghanistan. And thirdly, there has been a consensus being built around within the Afghan government and the general public that there should be peace negotiations with Taliban. So there has been a lot of pressure on Taliban, and with these sort of attacks, they're trying to first of all, derail the talk about particularly those elements who believe in military effort in Afghanistan. They're trying to derail the peace process. Secondly, they're trying to turn the people against the government. They are trying to give a message to the people that the government is not able to secure them. So you have to look at both from a different dimension.
Mr. Rahim, let me just come in there then, because I think for our international viewers, we have to try and clarify whether ISIL and Taliban, even though they try and describe themselves as 2 very distinct groups, are one and the same, all very different entities, or are they just tribal groups led by tribal leaders using the names to get the headlines? Why or how do we know these are 2 very different entities?
Look, first and foremost, they have been fighting each other on the battlefield. They have been facing off more often against each other instead of the government. Particularly in eastern Afghanistan, we have experienced a lot of ferocious fighting between the 2 groups. As late as 2 months back, they faced each other in Khogyani district of eastern Afghanistan, where they fought really serious battles against each other. And they have been trying to challenge each other in terms of capturing the territory or trying to send a message in terms of who holds the authority in the Afghan context. And then the objectives are different. Taliban look at their effort to take over the Afghan government, whereas the ISIS believe in larger this khilafah sort of governance, attaching themselves to the Middle Eastern ISIS, and they try to announce themselves as a wing, as a province, as a state of that bigger ISIS governance structure. So they are pretty different in terms of their views, in terms of their objectives, and the way they operate.
Right, for the moment, we'll leave it there. Mushtaq Rahim, thanks very much for your insight. Human rights groups are warning Rohingya refugees are being increasingly targeted by